It's great to be here at the end of a very dense and intense day. And I was reflecting on how we're all wrestling with the same challenge. So it's for me a pleasure to share with you where we stand as a company in Sanofi when it comes to facing the challenges and opportunities we've been talking about. Onia said that. My name is Daniela Ottini. I'm in charge of the biologics manufacturing for Sanofi. I joined the company 4 years ago, and prior to that, I spent 27 years with Abbott and AbbVie. So the challenge, not only pharma, but all the industries are facing the same challenge, which is transforming rising clockwork complexity in what we like to call engineered simplicity. And that's for a very good reason. And the reason is that we need to make sure that we reach our patients in a timely fashion. We don't have a lot of time, of course. And if we zoom in and look at Sanofi and how Sanofi is getting organized, it is 6 years since the company started a major transformation, moving from being diversified and to a certain extent fragmented into being integrated and into modernizing every single aspect of the business, putting science at the center of what we do and taking high risks to have high returns. The idea is to have, the end point is to become a company that is R&D-led, AI-powered, as you can read. And this means having the ability to implement AI at scale, and we'll talk a little bit about it later in the presentation. And that is because we're committed to improving our patients' lives while delivering compelling growth. This is Sanofi. Let's zoom in even further and look at manufacturing and supply, the organization I'm part of. For us, the challenge is clear. We will have to launch from now until 2030, 30 new products, there or thereabout. We don't do that from a standing start. We can rely on 29,000 talented people across the world and 39 manufacturing sites. And this organization delivers every year 2.1 billion doses of vaccines and medicines. But of course, the challenge is very different now because we will have to deliver on many new launches across different technology platforms and different technologies and manufacturing processes by themselves. So to do that, definitely we have, and we started actually a few years ago, as I said, to relook substantially at the way we operate, putting in place strong digital foundations, strong governances in a way that we're able to promote integration and scalability. So how do we do that? 4 levers. We set the pace. We chase excellence. We ignite teams. We ignite winning teams. And we lead with purpose. Setting the pace, why does it matter? We have to set the pace because our patients cannot wait. This has been the common theme throughout the whole day. Time is our currency. So I want to share with you some examples of how we decline this lever. First, modular manufacturing. Some of you might have heard in other presentations about 2 manufacturing sites that were recently inaugurated, one in Singapore and one in France, that go under the name of modulus. And the concept is, yes, the ballroom concept, many of you are very familiar with, but it's a modular construct, like not exactly a plug and play, but the concept is like a Lego in terms of framework. It's all single-use based, single-use technology based, and it gives the possibility, the way it is designed, to manufacture at the same time 4 different vaccines or products. We have tested with process feed that about 30 different products could be manufactured, and it brings me what triggered the reflection earlier this morning when Rainer from Boehringer was presenting about how important it is to be able to easily transfer products from one site to the other. Well, the way these 2 sites are designed allows for that maximum flexibility, and it also allows to minimize the changeover time to few days. Not to mention They're fully digitized with smart sensors installed, with the data connected not only to the OZPI in the DCS, but to the cloud. And you will see cobots running around. So it's really top-notch. And actually, on October the 9th, the Time magazine described Modulus as one of the innovations for year 2025. And then the digital accelerator. I think it was J&J earlier this morning who talked about the construct of having a startup company within the company. It was different in that case because it was about having all the different functions connected. Here, the construct of the digital accelerator is having a group of people that are loosely connected to our organization, like a startup within Sanofi. We have tested this concept with the R&D organization and with the commercial organization, and we as manufacturing came, at last we observed, we tested how it was working, and it is working. So the overall idea here is to have a group of experts, data scientists, data engineers, that have the space and the time to elaborate and to develop products. But what's very important is that it is the business leaders who are in the driver's seat and have to identify those problems that need a solution because it's mission critical towards the target that we have. So this requires that there's a certain level of digital literacy amongst the leaders at all different levels so that we can first prioritize, and second, identify and explain in details what kind of problem we're trying to solve so that the proper tool and product can be developed, and not the other way around, starting from a tool that will fit somehow in our day-to-day working life. It's been working very well so far. It was started in May of this year. And to give you a sense of the range of products that have been developed, they range from the end-to-end visibility of the value chain of a product to the improvement of the manufacturing processes or the development of ways to optimize the asset utilization. I'll give you a quick example. We have used the digital accelerator for an initiative in one of our manufacturing sites, a lighthouse in the drug product space. And we started from a business problem, which was increasing the output within available installed capacity. No time, no money to invest further, right? And starting from that problem statement that was very clear, we have leveraged standard operational excellence tools, and that is where the digital team from the digital accelerator came to help us, to give us advanced solutions that have potentiated, that have expanded the standard operational excellence tools. And as a result, in a few months, we had increased output of that manufacturing site. This is how focused we are, and this is how focused we are in prioritizing those solutions that have to help us solve meaningful problems. And that's snackable AI. You might have heard that we have developed, in collaboration with a tech company, an application such that in our mobile phone, we have the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of Excel files. And we started a few years ago. Initially, it was only about democratizing data. In fact, in the tool, you can find information that range from SG&A to NOE of a filling line to the P&L of a specific manufacturing unit. It was all about that, democratizing data. And we spent some time making sure that the data was accurate. It's not 100% accurate yet. But now the power is the correlation between data. And of course, we have developed agents and super agents that start providing recommendations. I'll give you an example. We have developed the site index and the quality maturity index. It's one number that for each manufacturing site gives the pulse of how the site is doing across different dimensions. The safety first, quality, delivery, cost, and engagement. It's one number. This required a very important shift in mentality. instead of spending time trying to reconcile the numbers and to explain why that number maybe is not exactly accurate, because we have the ranking of the manufacturing site. So imagine what kind of dynamics that starts. We started by saying, okay, let's look at the number and what is that number telling us. We start our business review with that. We provide feedback to the system so that this number is becoming more and more accurate. So these are 3 examples that show you how we're trying to accelerate the impact that we can have on our patients. And then chasing excellence. Here I have to say, since I joined Sanofi, one of the key elements that have immediately caught my attention is how Sanofi constantly and very deliberately looks at who's best in class. And there's a constant effort in benchmarking with the external world, within pharma and with different industries. 3 examples here. The digital excellence cockpit, which is a cockpit in which we have the key KPIs, which is nothing new, right? But the difference is how the data that feed the KPIs is gathered from the field directly, but also from the tier meetings at every different level. So what this does, as it gets better and better, it brings and puts the decision-making at the level of the knowledge, and only the exceptions are escalated. So yes, there's visibility in real time of what happens across the manufacturing network that is pretty extended, but only the exceptions are discussed and escalated. The one-click tech transfer, it doesn't happen in one click, but it's this, for those who were at the Amgen presentation, so it doesn't happen in one click, but this is the ambition. And under this umbrella, there's a host of initiatives and active programs that range from the regulatory filing that are being elaborated with Gen AI to the digital twin. And here we have a couple of examples. We heard a lot about digital twin today, right? And whilst we have 2 examples that I can share with you, one, a drug product site, a line that was installed a couple of years ago, came with a digital twin, so all the operating parameters could be tested after the factor acceptance test, the site acceptance test, and the first qualification activities were all anticipated thanks to the digital twin, so that the first qualifications with the process was seamless. Or drug substance, because we do manufacture material for phase 3, to support phase 3 clinical studies, we had to have a very fast transfer from R&D, and we were able to simulate the operating conditions of the bioreactor at scale, thus eliminating the need to have a technical run. So the time to clinical was shortened by 8 months out of 18 months, so quite a significant reduction. But our ambition is to go beyond that. Our ambition is to make sure that we can streamline the shop floor data to create a shop floor shadow, to put the information in context. The context is very important. We heard it a number of times today, in a way that we can anticipate drifts that we gather from the information from the shop floor, and then anticipate issues instead of managing them after the facts. And then process optimization. Here, once again, you all understand what the merit is here, but the example is an application that was developed that goes under the name of Simply, that aims at improving yield. How? By gathering process data that resides in different domains, and this is one big challenge that I'm sure you're all familiar with, which is the accuracy of the data that we have and the availability in many different places in our network. So the effort is, and it's working pretty well, we're piloting it with a couple of products, is to have the data that defines what a golden batch is so that that can be replicated. And we're targeting a 5 to 10% yield improvement. Of course, this is a target, and for some products it's working pretty well. If we move on, igniting winning teams. Here, I'm not saying anything new, right? You cannot implement AI at scale without rallying the whole organization. And a manufacturing organization, a manufacturing network is, by definition, displaced all over the world, different cultures, different level of maturity across sites, many nationalities, different technologies. So here the challenge is, number one, to make sure that the network is managed as such and not as a collection of sites. And number two, to make sure that, as we already mentioned and I alluded to, that there's a good level of understanding of what digital is all about, what AI is all about, in a way that at the different level of the organization, AI can be embraced, and it can be embraced in a way that makes sense. It has to do with preparing the workforce of the future. And it struck me that in a conference, a comment was made that probably we are the last generation of leaders to manage a workforce that is fully human. We started testing a humanoid in one of our manufacturing sites. That's only a test, but more and more we will have agents and probably humanoids in our manufacturing sites. So very important is, and there's a very deliberate effort to manage the network as such and to develop a set of standards that go under the name of SMS 2.0, which is Sanofi Manufacturing System, which is operational excellence. But the key here is that these standards are co-developed. So they are developed by the business owners, which is the manufacturing supervisor, the production supervisor, the QC lab managers. And then accelerate performance mindset. Here you see a Formula One car. It's orange because we partnered with McLaren. I'm Italian, as you can imagine. I had to deal with the fact that it's orange and it's not red, but I didn't make it personal. But what we learned from them, we learned a big deal. Yeah, so for me, orange is kind of a shade of red, but don't say it outside of this room. So we learned a lot from them. Let's say from a hard, heavy-duty standpoint, what we learned from them is how they manage an incredible amount of data. And they have helped us, actually, because we have learned from them how to install sensors on our filling lines to detect vibrations, to detect noise. They helped us with visual inspection. And this has helped with a tangible output, which is having improved the changeover on the filling line or even the OEE. But then we have learned from them also from a leadership attribute standpoint. They operate under huge pressure. Okay, it's entertainment. They say that we save lives, they don't. That's true, but they operate under huge pressure. They have to deliver, they have to execute with precision. They definitely compete, but they have to collaborate. Think about the dynamic between the two pilots. And they have definitely to trust data and to trust one another. So it's been a great collaboration that has helped us relook at some of the ways we work, because at times we justify ourselves saying that we operate in a regulated environment, and so they do. Last, delivering with purpose. We are here to serve our patients, the communities, and our planet. But science doesn't matter if the three of them cannot be served. So we are very focused on delivering on our goals to be net zero on greenhouse gases by 2045. And in all the new products, we apply sustainable process designs criteria. Patients are at the center. The One Global Health Unit has provided and keeps providing 30 essential medicines in the 40 most vulnerable countries. And we're about to serve, by the end of this year, this number will be superseded. This number here is going to be 1 million patients, and we take big pride of that. In 2025, we've been ranked as #1 lifestyle industry, once again from the Time magazine, but it's a coincidence, and #10 in all the industries. So with that, I want to leave you with this slide, which is more than a slide. It's really about, it summarizes how we, in the manufacturing organization, are really getting organized to anticipate the future to the best that we can, which is building the connected smart factories today to be ready for the future, so that we can be smarter and faster and bolder. So we like to make sure that we change the paradigm that we operate to be able to take advantage of AI, of digital, of the new tools, to have our teams engaged and equipped with all the tools that they need to really embrace AI and be ready to serve our patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela.
Time.
Yes, you left time for questions.
Super.
So let's see if we've got any questions from the audience. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the presentation, Umberto Moran. Question for you. Great for the partnership and having discussions with another company not related to the field. So my question is related. How can we, as a ecosystem, take that principle and apply it more? Because we can learn a lot more from other industries as well as each other without inflicting into IP.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. You know that McKinsey has created this neologism, which is co-petition, right? Which is, of course, we compete, but only through the collaboration the sector can grow. So conferences like these, where we can take inspiration, are very important. I believe it was Sanat this morning who mentioned the fact that we could treat agents as we do with CMOs. So there are ways, definitely, in which we can exchange the best practices and be inspired from one another without sharing what can be infringing any IP. How to do that? In conferences like these, there's a number of forums in which we're very active, or roundtables that are specific to some themes. It's also very important to be open. If I told you that we have figured everything out, I wouldn't be honest. I mean, what we do is, a big learning from McLaren is to fail fast and move on. So learn from the failures and move on. Accept the fact that failures can happen. That's why the construct of the digital accelerator helps, because first we prioritize those problems for which we want a solution, but then if the product that is developed doesn't work, we quickly move on. If we didn't have this structure, loosely connected from our very structured governances, probably that would be more difficult.
Hi.
Hi.
A simple question, probably a difficult answer. If you look at the demands that the Sanofi pipeline is putting on you, if you look to the future,
Yeah.
what tools are you using or utilizing at this point in time, AI, et cetera, to try to do a better job of figuring out what you need for facilities, other resources? In other words, how is this helping you plan for the future and maybe get more bang for the buck in terms of capital spent?
So the question is about making sure that we have not only the right level of installed capacity, but also enough flexibility. Because of course, with 30 launches, we don't get to decide which one will be successful or not. We simply have to be ready for all of them. So the way we're tackling this topic is, to a certain extent, we use AI, but not in the
What design implications are you using from what you've learned in current facilities into what you're designing into the future, and what data? And I'm taking to the McLaren emphasis on continuous improvement. You know, they're placing this sensor there, they're placing that sensor there, they're looking at this piece of data. They're always trying to build the more efficient, faster car, right? So how are you taking that mindset into what you're doing now and applying it to what you need to be doing in the future with either current facilities, new facilities, and so on and so forth?
No, thank you. Thank you for clarifying the question. They develop a car for each season, right? And of course, we cannot do that. The two sites develop, the Modulus sites, go towards that direction. there are two parts to this, to my answer. One is the development of the user requirements and for the design of facilities compared to our capital plan that we have over the 5 to 10 year horizon. And in this sense, the two modulus facilities are not something new, because in 2019, the manufacturing site of Framingham was also started up, and at that time, it was considered by ISPA as the model for the ballroom concept. So there's this tension within the engineering in Sanofi to make sure that we consider what's new in terms of designing a manufacturing. But this answers only partially your question and our ask. Not only we have to be innovative and current with the standards, but we need to make sure that we understand what our pipeline requires. Radioligands, well, antibody conjugates, they're more kind of familiar. So what we do is, in the existing facilities, we implement like N-1 in some cases, or the Pionic for downstream. So in the existing facilities, as we have the life cycle management and revamping, we take those opportunities to make sure that we have what we need in-house, looking at the pipeline ahead of us. We cannot solve all the problems. And in fact, there's a certain percentage of the growth that happens inorganically through acquisitions. Most recent one was the blueprint, to give you an idea.
Thank you. Thanks for the great talk, and thank you for bringing up that piece on sustainability. I think that's a really important topic that needs to be continually surfaced at these sorts of events. And that's my question is on that. I think that's a very aggressive target to be net zero by 2045, particularly when you think about existing manufacturing modalities and all that comes with it. We know that produces tremendous amounts of waste that needs to be dealt with. There's a move towards single-use bioreactors, which is going to produce even more, and then talking about spent cell culture waste. So I'm wondering if you can touch on or share a little bit more about what Sanofi is maybe thinking about doing to try to achieve that goal, because from my perspective, it seems very challenging to do that with the existing methods, and it's going to require some fundamental innovations that enable stepwise changes towards this goal, and incremental movements aren't going to get us there. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about what's being thought of internally at Sanofi.
Yeah, with pleasure. I have to say that the toughest part is Scope 3 emissions. Scope 3, all those emissions and activities that have an impact on the environment that is associated with our vendors and suppliers. That remains the toughest part. What we do on an ongoing basis, we have redeveloped some of the processes, intensifying the processes, and by doing these, improving or reducing the environmental footprint, streamlined some of the manufacturing portfolio, and constantly work on activities to reduce the impact, starting from the water intake or the use of renewable technology. But I would say that what makes a difference here is the deliberate effort and the very acute awareness of where we stand. And for this reason, I'm telling you the Scope 3 area is the one that we find more challenging, because it takes more time to either influence our suppliers or change them, as you can imagine. But there's a host of activities across all the different dimensions in the manufacturing processes that are pretty advanced for the vast majority. For those that are more, how can I say that, experienced or have been around for some time, we're very actively working on life cycle management improvements so that we can inherently reduce the impact on the environment.